Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring some unbelievable story. Stay tuned and let's dive in. On May 27th, 4 months before my 46th birthday, the unimaginable occurred. I had a heart attack. I was on the pool deck with a drink, waiting for the coals on my grill to fire up. At first, I assumed my final drink of beer had gone down the wrong way, but as it became worse, I realized something was really wrong. The agony was terrible and intensifying fast. I felt and even heard my heart race out of control, like if someone was standing on my chest. I collapsed to my knees, then onto my back, gasping for oxygen. Thank God for mobile phones, since they were the only thing that saved my life. I dug inside my shorts, took it out, and dialed 911. I'm not sure whether I yelled help or anything else. All I remember is that there was a big crash and a bunch of people were doing stuff to me. I must have passed out because the next thing I remember is being in the hospital and being informed I was being prepared for surgery. "Mr. Taylor, can you hear me?" the voice said. "We need to perform a heart bypass on you immediately, do you understand?" I nodded. They placed a clipboard in my hand and I signed my name to some kind of release, or even an order for Girl Scout cookies. I had no idea and didn't care. I just wanted the suffering to cease. "Is there anyone we should contact?" a nurse inquired. "My wife." I inquired. "Your wife? Is she here?" she said. "No, you were the only one in the house when the paramedics arrived." "I'll have someone check back as soon as possible," I was assured. "Now try to relax. We are on the way to the operating room and you should be fine." At this time, I guess I had a faint understanding of what was going on, but nothing was really registering in my head as I was rolled into an elevator and then into a vast, bright room. "Breathe deeply and when you wake up, it'll all be over," the doctor said. My life did not flash before me. I had no out-of-body experiences and thank goodness I didn't see a brilliant light at the end of the tunnel. I just awoke in the recovery room, with a middle-aged nurse hovering over me, monitoring my pulse. "How are you feeling?" she inquired. I attempted to speak, but my mouth was too dry. My intellect was functioning, but my body wasn't doing what I wanted. "Don't worry, you'll feel much better in a couple of hours. Just get some sleep," she told you. She was correct. The following time I awakened, I felt both better and worse. Emily, my wife of 26 years, was seated next to me on the bed. "Are you all right?" she inquired. When I got home, the neighbors told me what happened. "The doctors said you're going to be just fine," she joked. My mouth was still very dry, so when I tried to speak anything, I could hardly get it out. "Leave me alone," I began to say, but it came out as faint as a whisper. "What are you trying to say?" Emily inquired, leaning closer to my lips. "Get out of my sight and leave me alone," I yelled again, loud enough for her to hear. "Honey, don't try to talk. Just lie back and rest." "I'll be right here," she said, patting my face. At that time, my heart rate increased, my cheeks flushed, and a nurse rushed into my room to investigate. "Leave me alone," I cried at her. "Miss, you're going to have to leave. You're upsetting the patient and raising his vitals." "Please leave," Emily's nurse said. "But I'm his wife," Emily protested. "Be that as it may, you're upsetting him and I need you to leave right now," the nurse informed her. "Han, I'll be in the hallway if you need me," she murmured, turning back to me as she was led out of my room. I signaled to the nurse and she approached. "No visitors, please," I informed her. "And only discuss my condition with me. No one else." "I understand, Mr. Taylor. I'll put a sign on your door that says no visitors are allowed, and I'll make sure the doctor discusses your condition only with you." "Will you be needing anything else?" the woman said. I nodded, no. "Well, that being the case, please try to relax and get some sleep. The doctor will be in later to check on you. You don't get any sleep at a hospital. If they are not jabbing you, they are drawing blood or attempting to administer a medication in the middle of the night. Sleep? Sure, woman, I thought to myself. The doctor entered and said that everything had gone according to plan. They had performed a triple bypass and when they entered, they discovered indications of more damage from an earlier strike. I told him that had probably occurred about 3 months before, but I had assumed it was simply a stress reaction. "You're very lucky, Mr. Taylor. If you hadn't had your cell phone, you might not have made it, he told me. He looked at my record and stated, you really need to get your weight and blood pressure under control, or you're going to end up seeing me again. I want you out of the bed tomorrow morning. I need you to start walking at least 10 minutes every hour, and after that, we'll see how it goes. How long will I be laid up, Doc? If you're asking me when you can go back to work, the answer is not for at least 4 months. When you go home, you'll need someone there at all times, at least for the first couple of weeks. After that, we'll play it by ear depending on how you feel. Doc, I won't be rehabbing at home. Can you recommend a good facility? Well, there is a pretty good one about 3 miles from here that has a great workout area and a dietitian on staff, I heard him say. All you need to do is have our business office call and set it up for you. Let me warn you, though, it's kind of pricey, but it's got an excellent reputation. By the way, you've had a lot of visitors and a few of them grew a bit furious when they found out you'd asked no visits or phone calls, he added with a bewildered look. I understand you had your reasons, but I'd hate to be in your position when you go home, he concluded, heading out the door. Who told me I was coming home? I thought. A week later, I was seated in a private room in the rehabilitation facility, overlooking the outside pond and looking more like a hotel suite than a hospital room. I was given a thorough physical exam and asked how long I expected to remain. Let's plan for 4 months and see where we go from there, I told the coordinator. Mr. Wilson, you're roughly 65 pounds overweight and not in terrific physical form. We need to get you into the gym and set you up with an exercise regimen, but first we'll get you on a healthy food plan to help you lose weight. It won't be simple, but if you follow the staff's directions, you'll get results. So, with that, I'll take you down to the gym to get started. Well, you've got me for the next 4 months, so do with me as you wish, I remarked with a giggle as we set up a recuperation plan. You are undoubtedly asking how I put myself into this situation. The explanation is simple. I am too competent at what I do for a career. I am not boasting or stating this to boost my ego, it is a truth. I have a flair for identifying the greatest people for the job, ensuring they are thoroughly trained, and then letting them do what I hired them to do. I realized a long time ago that I couldn't do everything. I tried for a time, but it almost killed me. Now I sit back and let others handle their responsibilities. I assign them an assignment, explain the desired objectives, and then let them do what they do best. Life is now good. You see, I am the sales manager for a marketing agency. I've worked with the firm for 26 years, and a few years ago I became a silent partner. Nobody, and I mean no one, knows this, even my wife. 5 years ago, I took a 25% wage reduction to invest in the firm. I have 5 more years remaining, and I'll be a 50% owner with my pal Christopher. Does it sound like I have it together? I do when it comes to my professional life. However, my personal life is another story. I have 2 pampered children and a social climbing wife. My youngest, Ethan, barely got it through college and was disappointed when I did not give him a job with the firm. I basically informed him that family and business don't mix. Between you and me, I didn't want to be the one who fired his lazy ass when he didn't work out. He found a wonderful girl and married her. But he still asks me for money every other month. I suppose I never learned to say no to him, but not anymore. Olivia, 2 years older than Ethan, is a professional student. I believe she's on her 6th graduation plan. She's changed majors 3 times and I have no idea what she's studying now. But, notwithstanding, I warned her at the start of the school year that she only had 1 semester remaining and would be on her own after that. She went to her mother and complained, and when Emily reached me, I just told her enough. You get where I'm going with this, don't you? I am done being the good man with the open checkbook. At 24 and 28 years old, I shouldn't have to support them any longer, and I won't. They are now officially off my payroll. My wife, Emily, is a whole other tale. About 4 months ago, I was feeling a bit frisky one night. Our sex life had deteriorated significantly over the previous year, and I was attempting to get it back on track. I'm not seeking for sex 5 times a week, but 3 would be ideal. So, where was I? Oh, after dinner, I handed her a glass of wine and asked her what she was in the mood for. How about we go upstairs and have a little fun? I said with my sexiest grin. I'm a little tired tonight, and you know I have that party to plan for, she said. Come on, Emily, it's not like I'm asking for a kidney, just a little loving. Emily looked as interested as someone sitting in a dentist's chair waiting for a root canal, so I should have realized it wasn't going to go as planned. We undressed, climbed into bed, and the complaining began. I was taking up too much space, she was hot, I was sweating, and she didn't want me laying on top of her because I was too heavy. Why don't you climb on top, babes, and ride me like you used to? I told them. You know I have a hard time getting off that way, Emily said. Okay, just forget about it, I murmured, getting out of bed and headed to the restroom. Where are you going? To beat my meat in private so I don't have to hear you whine about how unpleasant it is to have sex with me anymore, I replied as I closed the front door. I took care of the situation, so to speak, and then went to our spare bedroom. She cried out, Where are you going? Away from you before I say something I'll regret, I said, shutting the door. She was true, I'd gained a lot of weight in the previous several years. I suppose I should be taking better care of myself, but I had become lazy. I had taken up golf, but it was mostly to bring in new business. I did not like it and performed poorly. The sole advantage of entering the elite lounge was that there was always something going on. I left the following morning before Emily even woke up. I was still angry, but it had subsided somewhat. It wasn't entirely her fault, I told myself as I sat at my desk, munching a donut and drinking my second cup of coffee. Emily sent me an email at 10 a.m. from her workplace. There was no I'm sorry or I love you, just how she wasn't in the mood last night, and instead of discussing it with her, I simply left in a huff. I set down my coffee and tried to remember the last time we had a decent lovemaking session. Lately, it was a quickie, a hand job, or her just laying there waiting for me to finish. It had really gone poorly, and Emily appeared to prefer not to do it with me anymore. That's when I had an epiphany, maybe she is having her wants met someplace else. That's when I decided to pursue the subject and see what happened. What the hell? What was she going to do? Cut me off? I responded with the following email. Whatever you're doing with whomever, you'd better stop right now if you want to stay married to me. When I pushed the submit button, I expected a response, but I assumed she'd wait until I came home. Emily wrote me a harsh email in which she chastised me for accusing her of cheating, claimed that I was the issue with our sex life, not her, and asked what sort of sex life I expected after becoming winded from going up 2 flights of stairs. That maybe she might get an oxygen tank and place it next to the bed for the evenings I want sex. Those were some of the kinder remarks she returned. Her last suggestion was that I relocate to the guest room permanently so that she wouldn't be held accountable if I had a heart attack. My reply was brief and to the point, so be it. I didn't go home for dinner that night. I ate with my partner, Christopher. I considered not coming home at all, but I knew it would just make problems worse. Emily was waiting for me as I walked through the door. How dare you? How dare you accuse me of cheating, she was screaming. I figured if you're not getting it from me any longer, you must be getting it somewhere else, I continued, refusing to back down. So, if you don't mind, I'm tired, and since all you're going to do is yell at me, I might as well go to bed. So I assume you're no longer sleeping in our bedroom, she said cynically. What's the point? You don't want me there any longer, and I don't go anywhere I'm not wanted, I muttered, descending the stairs. Sleep by yourself. See if I care, Emily said as I mounted the stairs. It was then that my chest began to ache. Every step I took was torture, but I wasn't going to stop. I barely made it to the top landing before either resting on the wall or falling down. I made it to the spare room, collapsed on the bed completely dressed, and passed out. When I eventually awakened and checked my watch, it was 2:30. I can't let her get to me like that, I reminded myself as I rushed to the restroom and splashed water on my face. I glanced in the mirror and disliked what I saw. I've got to get it together, I reminded myself as I peeled off my sweat-soaked garments. I slept until almost 9 the next morning. The home was peaceful. Emily had already departed, so I phoned into work and informed them that I was taking a vacation day. Instead of resting at home, I visited my doctor. You've got to drop at least 50 pounds, said my doctor, and your blood pressure is sky high. I'm going to prescribe you something to bring it back down to earth, but if you don't start taking better care of yourself, you're asking for serious trouble, the doctor cautioned. I had heard it all before, at least for the last 2 years. I tried dieting, but it wasn't something I liked doing, so I didn't. When I informed him I was going to attempt to lose weight and take the medication, he scheduled a 3-month follow-up visit. I left with a calorie chart and 2 diet plans to try. I tossed them in the backseat of the vehicle. Things about the home became frigid, at best. We stopped eating together and only talked to each other when absolutely necessary. We resumed communication at the conclusion of our 2nd month. There was no "I'm sorry," and we mainly discussed trivial issues or the kids. On Monday, the club hosted its annual charity auction. "Michael, are you going?" Emily inquired. "Yes, I'm going," I said. "Well, we might as well go together." "Is your tux pressed?" questioned the woman. "Cleaned, pressed, and ready to go." It was a calm journey to the club. We discussed nothing essential until I took the initiative. "I'm sorry," I murmured, driving away without looking at her. "I am, too," Emily said. "I've missed you, and I don't want to fight anymore." That was all we had time for as I drove up to the club. I gave the attendant my keys and he handed me the claim ticket. I stepped around, opened Emily's door, and offered her my hand. She accepted it, smiled, and my heart skipped a beat. We entered the dining area and located our table. Dinner was adequate, but the wine was much superior. I had purchased 4 bottles for our table, and with the other 3 couples, we drank to our good health. After supper, the band started playing, and people began to dance. I only did one slow dance with Emily, but that was enough for me. She asked whether I would mind if she danced with a few other guys. "No problem," I informed her. I was walking around the room and talking with some friends when I saw Emily on the dance floor. It was a slow dance and I couldn't identify the guy she was dancing with. His arm began around her waist but gradually moved south. It soon settled in the middle of her back. The same thing occurred again 2 dances later, this time on the moonlight patio. I followed, keeping out of sight. They were too far away for me to hear what they were saying, but their body language communicated clearly. When he leaned down and kissed her, I had seen enough. The parking lot attendant, who was not attending the auction, said, "Nothing in there, I want any more." "No," I said, getting into my vehicle and leaving. I was approximately 20 minutes away when my mobile phone called. Guess who? I switched it off and placed it on the seat next me. I had been home for nearly 2 hours when Emily burst in. "What the hell is your problem? Why did you just up and leave me?" she was screaming. "I thought the 2 of you wanted to be alone," I told him. "What the hell are you talking about, Michael?" "The dark-haired man on the patio, the kiss, I saw it all," I said. "That was nothing," she said. "Nothing? Are you saying that a man kissing my wife is nothing?" "Well, I care to differ," I shouted, my rage growing. "And I suppose you're now making it a habit to let men feel you up while you dance with them." "I and everyone else saw your display on the dance floor," I informed the girl. "Or was I just imagining it?" "Michael, it's not what it looked like," Emily remarked. I guess I should have asked Christopher to move his hand, but it was all just innocent flirting. The kiss was nothing more than him thanking me for dancing with him. "I left to look for you right after that, and it took you 2 hours to come back home. Since you weren't answering your phone, I had to find someone to give me a ride home. Let me guess, Christopher just happened to volunteer to drive you home. Am I right?" "Yes, it was Christopher, and no, nothing happened," she reassured me as I began to walk away. "Damn it, nothing happened, Michael," she said once again. "How long has it been?" I inquired. "How long have you given up on us?" I said, stepping up to my new and permanent room. "Goddamn it, Michael." "I didn't do anything," she yelled at me as she began to weep. I guess it was shortly after I gave up on myself, I concluded as I closed and shut the bedroom door. I never left the bedroom. Monday, I slept in and reflected on how my life had turned out. I had 2 children who I never heard from unless they needed something, and a wife who I was practically cohabiting with, sort of like a sister. I needed to get away for a few days. Our mountain cabin was around an hour's drive from the home. It had been my parents' home, and after they died, I bought out my brother's portion and renovated the inside. Monday, I gathered together a few items and went out. I made a brief call to work and was on my own for the next 4 days. I simply wanted some alone time to work out a few things without Emily looming over me. As soon as I opened the door, I realized something was amiss. I hadn't been there in at least 4 months, and when I left, everything was spotless. Someone has been here since then. There was an empty bottle of wine on the counter, and a brief investigation revealed that our bed had been slept in. Not only did someone sleep in, but they also had sex on the bed. I could still see the ring formed by the damp spot on the white sheets. Well, I now know where, and I've got a pretty good idea with whom, I told myself as I pulled the mattress to the door and threw it out on the grass. My pulse was racing, and I was sweating profusely as I sat in a chair on the porch. Michael, old buddy, it looks like you've been replaced, I told myself, growing upset again. To hell with all of them. I don't need them. I used to, but not anymore, I reminded myself. Over the following 4 days, I compiled a list of what I wanted out of life and where I wanted to go, none of which included any of my family. It was similar to a bucket list, but without the need to actually die. I arrived home late Friday afternoon, but Emily was nowhere to be found. She didn't come home that night, so by Monday afternoon, I had decided to smoke a rack or 2 of ribs and wait for her. I was almost looking forward to her explanation of where she had been for the last 2 days when all hell broke loose and I had a heart attack. So it leads you to where I am today. I eventually contacted Christopher from rehab to let him know I was still alive and kicking. They wouldn't answer my calls, he said. Are you feeling better? He inquired. But still pretty weak. It looks like I'm going to be laid up for a couple of months. I need Judy to bring by my laptop so I can keep in touch and updated, I told the doctor. You think that's wise? Christopher asked. Don't worry, I won't overdo it, but between Judy and me, we'll keep everything current, I informed the guy. You know your wife was here the other day. She took something off your desk. I think it was that picture of the 2 of you, he told me. Are you guys doing okay? He inquired. Never better. Just if Judy drops off my computer, and for God's sake, please don't tell anyone where I am, I instructed him. By the way, I'm milking our health insurance for everything I can get out of it, I told myself with a grin. That's what it's there for. Just get better and let me know if you need anything, buddy. Bastards, I dubbed them after the 2nd week. They attempted to work me to death in the gym, and now they are just feeding me crumbs of food. I've seen bigger appetizers, I murmured to myself, glancing at my dinner plate. Despite exercising 4 times a day and eating 5 meals that a baby couldn't live on, I was losing weight. After about 5.5 weeks, I was less crabby and into the groove. The food sucked and there was never enough, but I liked what was happening to me. I could walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes without oxygen, my pants were loose around my middle, and for the first time in a long time, I started feeling better about myself. I told myself when the Goodwill truck drove into the driveway. The driver asked Emily, "Are you Mrs. Taylor?" "Yes, I'm Mrs. Taylor," Emily said. "I've been given a pickup order with instructions to get with you," she was telling him. "What's the pickup order?" Emily inquired. "I never requested a pickup." "I understand. It was started by your husband, Thomas Grant," he continued, giving her the order. "It says here to pick up every piece of clothing in the house that belongs to your husband." The message said that if they weren't already packed up, Emily needed to indicate them where things were so they could get started. They still had one more pickup this afternoon. Emily showed them Michael's closet and dresser in their bedroom and brought one of the workers downstairs to where his winter clothing were kept. It took them just under an hour to have everything packed up and loaded into the truck, and she signed their paperwork and received a copy before they drove away. What the hell is he doing? Emily was worried when Michael refused to see Ethan or Olivia. She knew he was upset with her, but that wasn't a reason not to see his children. She couldn't see or talk to Michael while he was in the hospital, and the doctor wouldn't tell her how he was doing or when he would be released. On Tuesday, she sneaked into the hospital, ascended the stairs to Michael's floor, and raced into his room after waiting for the nurse to leave. Emily burst through the door, shouting, "Why won't you talk to me?" A surprised lady glanced at her and remarked, "I don't know you," as she tried to figure out what this insane woman was doing in her bedroom. "Where have you moved Thomas Grant?" Emily yelled at the nurse at the front desk. "I'm sorry, he's gone," the nurse said. Emily's eyes welled up. "When?" she asked. "What have they done with his body?" She wept. "I am his wife, damn it. I have the right to know," she shouted, becoming enraged again through her tears. "When I said he's gone, I meant he checked out 2 days before. If you need any further information, please visit the office." "So if that's it, I have a floor full of ill patients to care for," the nurse said. Michael had been released and transferred to a treatment center, according to the business office, but they were unable to reveal where he was. Great, back to square one, Emily reflected as she stepped out the door. Sitting in her vehicle, she plotted her next move. Michael was correct. I had given up on the two of us long ago. His weight had risen, and whenever I complained about it, he told me not to bother him. When we did have sex, he was like a massive bag of potatoes piled on top of me. When I informed him he was crushing me, he became agitated and tried to finish with his arms or elbows. By that point, all I wanted was for him to finish and leave me alone. Sex with him was no longer joyful, and whenever he uttered the word sex, my stomach tightened. We did it approximately once a month, after he complained about it for a day or two. I suppose you might call it pity sex since, although he got off, I never did. She was becoming really frustrated, which is when Christopher entered the scene. I first met Christopher when we joined the prestigious lounge. They had a dinner and dance once a month, and he would always come alone. During the night, he would dance with all the available women. As the evenings progressed, Michael would be off drinking or feeding his face, and Christopher and I would dance the night away. It had been a long time since anyone had held me like that. Soon, the routine became one of dancing a few numbers and then sitting and talking on the. After a couple of months, Christopher and I met for lunch one Monday afternoon while Michael was golfing. We had a couple of glasses of wine, and everything just seemed so right. We ended up in the backseat of his car, making out like a couple of teenagers, doing everything there was to do without taking our clothes off. I jacked him off, and he fingered me until I climaxed at least twice. I hadn't felt this way in a long time. We adjusted our clothing, kissed farewell, and I went back to the home, not feeling horrible until I was in the shower, attempting to get myself off while thinking about Christopher. What the hell was I doing? I thought to myself. I'm playing about with this man in the backseat of his vehicle, and now I'm attempting to get off while thinking about him rather than my husband. How sick is this? I thought to myself, disgusted at what I was doing. The problem was that I no longer felt sexually attracted to Michael. I nagged him about his weight for the next 4 weeks, telling him how sexy he'd be if he lost 40 pounds, but he never got the hint, and he just got angry with me again. Everything came crashing down when he wanted to fool around one night after dinner, and it was a disaster of a session, and he got mad and went into the bathroom. I felt bad, but not that bad. He slept in the spare room that night and was gone before I got up the next day. I had the dark brown touch at work the next morning, and everything I touched turned to shit. I was feeling sorry for myself, so I emailed Michael and basically told him that it was all his fault that he walked out on me the night before. He came back with a real eye-opener: whomever I was cheating with, I'd better stop if I still wanted to stay married. That was all it said. There was no way he could possibly have known about that Monday, but if he had been taking care of business at home, it would never have happened. And it wasn't like we had sex or anything, it was just a little fooling around. I guess I never should have answered his email when I was mad because I called him everything I could think of. I told him I'd never cheated on him, and if he weren't such an overweight slob, we'd have more sex. I now realized that I was basically pushing him away, and I guess he was tired of arguing, when he responded that maybe he should stay permanently in the guest room if I no longer wanted him. When Michael returned home, we had a huge argument, and we threw accusations at each other, and he went one way and I went the other. I slept alone that night, and for many, many nights after that. It was the night of the charity auction that we finally apologized to each other, and it had been tearing me apart, but I guess we were both too stubborn to admit we were either wrong or what the real underlying problem was. We had a wonderful dinner. Michael danced with me before going to mingle with his friends, and I made the mistake of dancing with Christopher. We danced maybe a little too close, and out on the patio, he told me he wanted to take it to the next level, then he kissed me. I told him it was a mistake and that I would never cheat on my husband, and I left him out there licking his wounds. I didn't see Michael leave, nor did anybody else. The parking lot attendant informed me he had gone about a half hour earlier, and when I phoned him, it went straight to voicemail. I was upset and had one too many beers before realizing I needed to find a way home. Christopher approached and inquired, "What's the matter?" Michael was angry for some reason and departed. "He won't answer his phone, and I need to find a way home," I said. "After the auction, I'll give you a ride home," he said. I gave him a glance and said, "I'll keep my hands to myself." "Okay," he assured me. I drank halfway through the auction before we left, and on the drive home, I began feeling upset again. How could he just leave me there? I fumed. When Christopher pulled into the parking lot by the lake, I was surprised, and when he reached over to kiss me, I didn't stop him. The only reason we didn't go all the way that night was that a police car, making his rounds through the parking lot, hit the car with his spotlight. I sobered up in a hurry. "Christopher, take me home right now," I said. I was practically sober when Michael accused me of infidelity, and I went berserk when he questioned when I had given up on our marriage. When I came home, I thanked him and raced inside. I broke down inside and began to weep, telling him that I had never cheated on him, but he no longer believed me. Michael never left his room on Monday, and I didn't push it because I figured we'd have words Monday, and I wanted to make sure I had everything in order. When he didn't come home Monday night, I assumed it was his way of punishing me. When he didn't come home Tuesday, I called his secretary, Judy, and was told he had taken a couple of days off. The bastard's off somewhere sulking, I thought to myself. Well, two can play that game. I left on Friday to spend a couple of days with my daughter at college. We had a great time bonding and even had a girls' night out with a couple of her friends. Friday night, Monday morning, I woke up with a hangover and an upset stomach. "Guess I'm too old for that kind of partying anymore," I said, getting ready to leave. After saying goodbye to my daughter and thanking her for a pleasant time, I went home. I hadn't even gotten out of my vehicle when my next-door neighbor walked over. "Michael was taken by ambulance to the hospital this morning," I heard her say. The front door was closed, but the lock was broken. I ran inside and saw a few things had been moved around, and I could smell the smoker on the deck. The coals were almost out, but there were 2 slabs on the grill, so I took them off, put them in the refrigerator, and opened up the yellow pages. There were only 2 hospitals in our area, so I called Pinewood Medical Center and found out Michael had been admitted, but they wouldn't tell me anything over the phone. I changed and went out. "A triple bypass," I nearly yelled. "How long will he spend in surgery?" "Just about another hour," I was informed. All I could do was wait. "He is a terrific doctor, and we caught it in time. After surgery, he will proceed to post-op and be allocated a room. If you wait in the lounge, I'll come get you after they are done." Can you say had, because that's precisely how I felt. I kept telling myself, he could have died. When I bring him home, I will show him how much I adore him. We'll get through this together. But I wasn't given the opportunity. I eventually tracked him down at the rehab facility, but he still refused to meet me. I was outraged. Stubborn was one thing, but Michael was taking it too far. I don't know how he found out about what happened to Christopher, but someone must have seen us and informed him. I simply wanted the opportunity to explain that nothing occurred, but he avoided me like the plague. Ken and Judy weren't much help, but when I discovered he had his laptop, I wrote him an email, but it wasn't like my previous one. "Michael, I love and miss you, honey, and I'm not sure why you won't let me see you. I know we've had some disagreements recently and we've both said things in anger, but I still love you and I think you love me. Please give me the opportunity to clarify whatever you believe I have done or have not done. Michael, I need you and want to grow old and grey with you. If you won't let me see you, please speak to me. Also, the children don't comprehend why you won't see them. They arrived to the hospital, and when the nurse refused to allow them inside your room, John became enraged. Please contact them since they are also really worried about you. Your loving wife." I was composing an email to a salesperson who had lost a huge order due to sheer idiocy when Michael's email came up. I completed typing the email to the salesman, informing him that if it occurred again, he'd be on the outside looking in, and then I returned to Michael's. I read it 3 times before responding. Dear Emily, let's get to the point. You haven't been my loving wife for almost a year. It's true that I've gained a lot of weight, but when you were as large as a house when pregnant with Ethan, did I mock or push you away because you were scrawny or fat? I'm the same guy you married many years ago. Don't attempt to blast smoke up my ass now that I'm laid up. You are no longer interested in coming to bed with me. You made this crystal obvious the last time we were together. Based on everything I've seen and learned, it seems like Christopher or someone else has taken my position. I discovered your love nest. You could have at least done me the favor of changing the bedding and disposing of the rubbish. I did manage to pull out the mattress and empty the wine bottles. You are correct in one thing: we shall both become old and grey. We simply won't be doing it together. You're about to be ex-husband. I thought to myself as I pressed the send key, that should shut her up. I made a list of all my assets, and Emily was going to get 50% of everything she knew about, but I wanted to keep the things she didn't know about secret. Ken told me that if he was asked by the court, he'd have to reveal I was a partner, but if they just wanted to verify my wages, that's all he'd give them. The cabin was mine, a gift from my parents, and we could just keep the cars we were each driving to make it simple. What love nest? Emily said. I don't know what you're talking about. Our bedroom is the only love nest I know of. If you're accusing me of anything, please face me rather than playing these infantile games. I think this way of contact is as good as any, I said to her. How stupid do you think I am? I walked up to the cabin and discovered all of the evidence. Unfortunately, I went up there a week before my heart attack. Did you spend Friday and Monday at his apartment, or did he pay for a hotel stay this time? I figured that would stop her up, but it wasn't more than 10 minutes until I received her response. Hell, this is the most we've talked in the last 4 months. Call your daughter and ask Olivia who spent Friday through Monday morning with her at college after you so kindly went without informing me. For your knowledge, I haven't been to the cabin since you and I were there around 4 or 5 months ago, so if that's all you've got, it's rather pitiful. Could I be wrong? Regardless, the past 2 years of our marriage have been quite unpleasant. I took up the discussion with my son, Ethan. Ethan, Dad here, I began the chat. Yes, I am well and doing quite well. And no, I don't want to talk about your mother right now, I informed him. My bluff began. I know you've been cheating on Cindy, and I want you to stop before I call her and rat you out, you piece of shit. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about, Ethan said. I was up at the cabin and our neighbors reported seeing the two of you when you walked up there. You did not even change the bedding, you jackass. What do you think Cindy will say when I call her? If she doesn't shoot your ass, her brothers will definitely pay you a visit, I added, continuing fishing. It was only one time, Dad. You have had to trust me. It was not an affair. He argued it was only once and she no longer works for the company. I will only say this once. If I ever hear you messing around or suspect you're gazing at another lady, I'll contact Cindy right away. If you understand my point, she should be the happiest and best cared for wife on the planet from now on. Get your head out of your ass and grow up, goddammit. Please, Dad, you can depend on it. Please don't call Cindy, Ethan implored. All right, kid, I have to leave. Remember what I told you? I reminded him before hanging up. Well, that was fascinating, I thought to myself as I evaluated my next move. I typed one more email to Emily. Well, I assume you didn't mess anybody up at the cabin. It turned out that it was our son. That, however, does not explain your interactions with Christopher or anybody else. I think I was still in love with you till that night, but no more. I believe you still love me, but you have not been in love with me for a long time. I'm sorry, but I can't live like that anymore. Life is much too brief. I discovered out in an unpleasant manner. That's how I ended it, and I was as much to blame as Emily. We knew we were drifting apart, but we never did anything to stop it. Emily had no time for us because of her work, kids, and social calendar, and I was no better because I was trying to conquer the business world on my own. The only difference was that Emily looked as good as she did when I first met her, and I looked like someone from a slobs magazine. But not anymore. I spent the next 4 months doing nothing but exercising and eating well. The first 35 pounds came off quickly, but then I reached the first of many plateaus, but I never gave up. I was now motivated to reclaim what I'd lost years ago, my waist and, most importantly, my life. Emily and I emailed each other every week to keep each other up to date on what was going on in our lives, but we never saw each other again. After 6 months, I half expected to receive divorce papers, but none arrived. Our emails mostly dealt with how we felt about each other, our breakup, the problems we saw in our marriage, and why we did nothing to fix them. As I already said, we were both at blame. The kids split their time between the two of us, her dinner and my dessert. Ethan announced that Cindy was pregnant, and Olivia said she'd finally gotten her degree or would have it by the end of the semester. I laughed and said I'd believe it when I saw it. They tried to pump me for information, but I told them it was none of their business. Olivia got a little irritated, but backed off when I told her enough was enough. We walked down memory lane for nearly a month. Emily asked if I remembered the first time we ever did it. Our roommate and parents walked in on us, and I corrected her, telling her that time didn't count because we never had a chance to actually finish. I still don't know how it happened, but our emails became more intimate and emotional. I sent her a set of emerald earrings for Christmas, knowing she didn't have any since she had given hers to Olivia on her 21st birthday. I merely wrote a tiny message inside to replace the ones you gave up. Emily never sent me anything for Christmas, so I suppose I wasn't expecting anything. As New Year's Eve neared, Ken contacted me with a problem. Michael, my wife's sister, is visiting town, and Carrie wants to accompany us to the New Year's Eve party at the exclusive bar. Her sister refuses to go stag, and Carrie would not leave her at home alone. Can you be her pal and date on New Year's Eve? Come on, Michael, I'll owe you big time. He must have begged me for a week before I eventually gave in. What the hell, I was just going to sit in front of the TV anyway. I then recalled it was formal and I didn't have a tux. It took me 3 shops and a large bribe to acquire a tux and have it cut in less than a week. Wait until Ken sees my expense report for December, I remarked, laughing. Ethan and his wife asked me over for New Year's Eve, but I declined since I had a date. Ethan asked, "This is not a date." "I am chaperoning my boss's wife's sister," I informed him. "You don't have to lie to me, I won't tell Mom," the man said. "I am not lying. And your mother has probably already set a date for New Year's Eve, so why don't we just drop it?" I responded, little irritated. That was the one thing neither of us had mentioned in the last 9 months if either of us was dating. I'd gone to a few business lunches, but that was about it. I wasn't sure about Emily, though a good-looking woman like her probably had a full dance card. We were still married, but only in name. I suppose we should address that issue after the new year, I told myself. I arrived to Ken's house at 7 p.m. and he allowed me in. I met Sue, Carrie's sister, who was about 45 and quite attractive. I offered that we travel in one vehicle, but Ken insisted on 2. "Look, after the dance you can go home, and I'll take the 2 women back with me." "That is, unless you want to try your luck with Sue," he remarked, elbowing me in the side as Carrie advised him to act his age. The room was busy and there wasn't an available seat to be found. I knew the most of the people at our table and they were amazed at how fantastic I looked. "Well, Michael, how much weight have you lost?" "Somewhere around 80 pounds, I informed them. "Hell, if I didn't know you so well, I never would have recognized you," a woman told me. Dinner was decent, with a choice of steak or chicken, and it was palatable, along with the vegetables and rice. I ate about half, because there was no point in blowing my diet tonight. I had 1 glass of wine and nursed my second as I reconnected with people I hadn't seen in 9 months. The lights dimmed and the band began. Sue stated she wasn't much of a dancer, and I wasn't either, so after a few songs, I excused myself and began going around the room when I noticed her. She was smoking hot, about 5 feet 8 inches tall, brown hair, and a figure to die for. She wore a blue strapless dress that caressed every curve in her body. I observed her for the next 30 minutes as she danced a couple semi-fast songs with 3 elderly gents. Every time a slow dance began, she returned to her table and Saturday. Despite being asked, she never did a slow dance with anybody. I handed one of the band members a $100 and requested him to play 2 slow songs back to back, the first being You Look Lovely Tonight, and I didn't care what the second song was as long as it was slow. Just as the band began to play, I approached this angel and invited her to dance. I'm sorry, but I only dance slow songs with my husband, she said without looking at me. Well, then I guess there will be no problem, I answered, reaching in and taking her hand. She turned around and was about to say something when she exclaimed, Michael. In the flesh. Now, about that dance, I murmured, pulling Emily to the ground. All I let her say was, Michael. Don't talk, just dance with me, I instructed Emily as I gripped her tightly and moved across the floor. I never released her when the second song began. I was touching her back and waist, and when the band performed Nights in White Satin, I drew her in even closer. My body reacted with the greatest erection I'd experienced in the previous year. This looks like someone missed me, Emily murmured into my ear. She was correct. I missed her, but I was not about to return to the life I had left behind. When the song finished, I didn't want to let her go. I guess we should talk one of these days, I said, still holding her hand. Why not now? Don't you think your date might get a little jealous? I told her. What date? I came with Ethan and Cindy, she said, gesturing to them on the dance floor as Ethan grinned back at me. I'll be back in a second, I informed her as I returned to my seat. You set me up, didn't you? I questioned Ken. No, Ethan, Olivia, and I set both you and Emily up, he smiled. Hell, Sue didn't even want to go. I had to bribe her to even come. So why don't you be a good little boy, get the hell out of here, and I'll see you sometime next week. When I returned, Ethan and Cindy were already back at the table. You two think you're pretty smart, don't you? I questioned Cindy and Ethan, who grinned at Emily and me. I had no idea what they were planning, Emily said, her eyes begging me to trust her. I didn't say where we'd be, just if you'd like to spend New Year's Eve with us, Cindy said. The 3 of us? Emily inquired. You two need to talk, and Ethan and I need to leave. I can't drink. I've eaten my fill, and I'm waddling like a duck on the dance floor in my condition, she said while massaging her abdomen. So if you two don't mind, we're out of here. I had a million things to say, but Emily began chatting nonstop. You look so good, Michael. How much weight have you lost? Where are you living? I lost track of you when you moved out of the rehab center. Are you dating? Are you seeing anyone in particular? She went on for a long time. It looked as if she was rushing to have all of her questions answered in the first 5 minutes for fear of missing out on another opportunity. Let's get out of here and go somewhere where we can talk, I said to Emily, taking her wrap and guiding her out to my vehicle. Emily inquired, where are we going, as I escorted her to my vehicle. You'll see, I said, keeping my gaze fixed on the road during the first 5 minutes of stillness. We were almost frightened to say anything that may upset the atmosphere. I haven't been dating, and I haven't been to bed with anyone, if you're wondering, Emily answered without giving me a glance. And I never went to bed with Christopher or anyone else either, no matter what anyone told you. I know, I said, keeping my eyes on the road. What do you mean, you know? You were the one who accused me of cheating on you. I know that, she grumbled, and if I had proof that you were sleeping around, we wouldn't be in this car together right now. I remained silent for a minute, absorbing the weight of her words. After a few seconds of stillness, I spoke up. Emily, it's not just about what happened. It's about everything. I've spent so long ignoring the problems between us, and I can't do it anymore. I need something real, something that feels right. Emily was silent and deep in meditation. Just before midnight, I drove into our lake house's driveway. I left the lights on when I opened the door and returned to the vehicle to collect Emily. Once inside, I lit the gas fireplace and poured a glass of our favorite wine for each of us. This is how it began and ended 9 months ago, I said, offering her a drink. No, Emily said, shaking her head. It didn't start there, it started much earlier, and it only came to a head that night. She stared at me, tears beginning to form in her eyes. You can't imagine how many nights I lay awake, wondering how you must hate me for what I said and did to you, and that if you ever gave me another chance, how I'd make it up to you. I leaned over and drew her closer, kissing her soft lips. Our glasses of wine were not consumed for quite some time after that. We allowed the night to flow spontaneously, releasing the grief of the past as we held each other. Our clothing was strewn over the living room floor, kitchen table, and bedroom floor. We stripped nude and slid into bed together, something we hadn't done in a long time. It had been a while for both of us. Emily grabbed my head and dragged me up to her lips. "I owe you this," she said quietly as she walked south. After an intense and passionate session, she slumped forward onto my chest as we began to descend. We clutched each other tightly, almost frightened to let go. I glanced at her and said, "I guess that's what you call starting the new year off with a bang." "We've still got a lot to talk about, don't we?" she said quietly, kissing me. "I think we do," I answered, sitting up and reaching for the bottle of wine. "This conversation is going to take a while." I slumped back down on the bed, drinks in hand, and we celebrated the new, hopefully better year. "I know we have a lot to discuss," she continued quietly, "but I just want to tell you again how sorry I am." I stopped her right there. "You're sorry?" "I'm sorry too. The kids are sorry. Everyone is sorry. But that changes nothing. We need to change. You and I both need to change the way we look at what's left of our marriage. I won't go back to what I left. I'd rather get a divorce and start over." Emily began to weep gently, the weight of everything settling in. "I don't want a divorce," she stated through tears. "I don't either," I said, hugging her hard. "But I won't go back to the life I was living before all this happened. The house has to go. And you can move into the condo I'm renting for now. We can figure out later where we want to live, but that house has too many bad memories for me." Emily sat up and gazed at me, her eyes filled with emotion. "But that's our home. And I'm your wife. It should be a no-brainer for you which to choose." I took a big breath. "We'll sell the house, take what furniture we want, and either donate the rest or give it to the kids. I don't want the expense, upkeep, or responsibility of a big house anymore. A 2-bedroom condo is all we really need. I want to travel and see all the things I've put off all these years. I've been given a second chance and I'm not going to squander it." Emily dried her tears and nodded slowly. "And what about our commitments and responsibilities? We can't just throw everything away and start over, can we?" "Screw them all," I said forcefully. "I'll work and give them 100% when I'm there, but that's it. No more weekends, business travel, or damn golf outings. I want my life back. I want to have fun and I want to feel excited about doing something new. And if I want to make love morning, noon, and night, I don't want a wife telling me she's not in the mood. Not anymore." Emily glanced at me, uncertain, but with hope in her eyes. "Michael, I don't know if I can do all that." "Then you have a choice to make, but make it quick," I replied, resting back against the cushions. "The train is leaving the station, and you're either on it or not." Emily remained quiet for a long, feeling the weight of everything in the room. Then she slowly nodded. "I'll try. But I can't promise I'll be perfect. But I'll try." "That's all I need," I replied, pulling her closer again, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. "We'll figure it out together." And, for the first time in years, I felt hopeful. A glimpse of a fresh beginning. Thank you for watching. Do you believe in second chances? Please let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell. See you next time.